All right, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We are so excited to be back with our Thursday webinars. We appreciate your patience during our little break that we had, but we will now be doing these going forward. Every other Thursday, you can expect us to be doing a webinar. So the same way you signed up for today's, feel free to go to our payentry.com/webinars and sign up for any future webinars we have that interest you. And if you are not able to join us, you can always sign up and you will get emailed a recording of the webinar. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I want to introduce myself. My name is Adina Glincher, and I am the Senior HR Services Advisor here at PayEntry. If at any point during our presentation today you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email address is located both on the top and on the bottom of that screen, hrservices@payentry.com, and myself or a member of our team will get back to you with answers to your questions. And then, as always, I do need to state that this training does not constitute legal advice. If you do have questions for your legal team, we ask that you reach out to them directly. We are HR professionals and not attorneys here. All right, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's talk through what we're going to discuss today. So today we're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. So first we're going to go through our agenda and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. So we're going to start by defining some commonly used terms for everybody. We're going to recognize the importance of DEI in your workplace. We're going to identify the differences between diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're often used interchangeably, but they do mean different things and they all are very important. So we're going to go through that. We're going to help you think outside the box, ways maybe you can incorporate DEI in your workplace, or if you already have, how you can maybe better it. We're going to chat through any consequences that may occur if you fail to implement DEI in your workplace, prioritizing it in your company. We're going to test your knowledge a little bit. We'll have a little bit of fun with that. And then, as always, we will end with the Q&A session. So before I forget to mention, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, you can either save them, email us after, or you can type them into the questions box. There will be one, or actually a couple slides today where we will ask for your participation. So when we do ask for your participation, we ask that you put your answers into the questions box as well, so we can get a good idea of how you're all doing and whether you're retaining the material. And then at the very end of the session, we will have a Q&A as well. So many opportunities for you to ask questions today. So before we get into defining, we want everyone on the call today to take a few minutes and to consider your overall DEI in your company. I'm going to briefly read through these bullet points for you, but you can start doing so if you would like. And I want you to ask yourself, does this apply to me, yes or no? So first, does your company create a workplace that allows employees to be themselves at work without fear? Second, is there diversity among the people a job candidate will meet and see on their first visit to the company, or maybe even during their interview? Are employees of different backgrounds encouraged to apply for higher positions? Does your company have policies and procedures for reporting incidents of discrimination and/or bias in the workplace? Are employees of different ages valued equally? And does the company demonstrate a commitment to meeting the needs of employees with disabilities? If you answered yes to every one of these, you are probably in an excellent place regarding DEI in your workplace. Excuse me, I can't speak today. And if you happen to answer no, you're just not quite sure, then hopefully we can teach you something today to improve it. All right, so those definitions I've been promising you. Diversity is all the ways in which people differ. Differences in perspective, identity, and backgrounds. And we're going to break down diversity in our next slide, so we're going to dig even further into that definition. Equity is fair treatment, opportunity, and advancement for all people. No matter what that diverse background might look like, equity is that fair treatment. And then inclusion. Generally, with inclusion, a variety of people have power, they have a voice, and they have decision-making authority. So let's break each one of these down a little bit further. Diversity is less about what makes people different and more about understanding, accepting, and valuing those differences. So we like to break diversity down into 4 different categories: internal, external, organizational, and worldview. When you look at internal diversity all the way on the left side of the screen, you'll notice that many of these, such as race, ethnicity, age, actually, I think all of them, are protected classes. So it's probably not the first time you've seen that list. You've probably seen it during maybe one of our harassment or discrimination seminars as well. External diversity includes things such as education, personal experiences, socioeconomic status, spirituality, and of course, you can read the rest of that. And then organizational diversity. So within your organization, maybe people have different job functions, management statuses, seniority, department, and union affiliation. And then worldview diversity is exactly what it sounds like, your view on the world. So your outlook on life may differ than the person next to you's. Your knowledge of history, political beliefs, and your cultural events that you have experienced. So we often hear this word diversity, and I think we all immediately just assume race, gender, and sexuality, but there's so much more to it. There's so many different factors of diversity. Now let's break down equity. So diversity refers to the many ways people are different. Equity is about creating fair access and opportunity and advancement. In other words, creating a fair playing field. So I absolutely love this image on the right. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have seen this or another version of it before, either just online or during another training. And I like it because it really helps me understand equity. When you look at the 3 individuals on the left side of the image, that's equality, right? They're all given the same size block. It's equal, there's no differences, but they can't all reach that same goal of reaching the apple, or we're going to pretend like it's an apple. And then when we look at the 3 people on the right who are really the same 3 people, same sizes, that's a demonstration of equity. So they're all given different maybe opportunities, maybe different chances, or in this case, different size blocks so that they have equal and fair opportunity to reach that apple. So that is an example of creating a fair playing field. And last but not least, we're going to break down inclusion. So I think a puzzle is the absolute best way to demonstrate this. You would think that a work environment that prioritizes diversity and equity naturally would create inclusion, right? Well, it's not always the case. People must feel a sense of belonging and value within an organization, even among the most diverse teams. So let's take a few pieces out of this puzzle. Let's look at culture, gender, and job level. So if you have, a great diversity of different people of different genders and cultures and different levels, that's wonderful. But if you don't allow them to feel included in your work environment and create that sense of inclusion, then you're not tackling all that encompasses DEI. So we're going to go in the next slide into a nice Venn diagram where we kind of compare and contrast this, and then we're going to look at what your work environment may look like if you only have 1 or 2 instead of all 3. So when you have diversity, you have representation of different identities within an organization. When you have equity, you have consistently recognizing and redistributing power, and when you have inclusion, you ensure power sharing in decision making. Great. Now let's take out that gray bubble for a moment and let's look at diversity and equity only. So if your workforce has diversity and equity and no inclusion, then general culture integration results in disengagement and low retention. Your employees don't feel included. Now let's take out equity. We're going to keep diversity in, we're going to add inclusion in. If you have no equity within your company, then generally the dominant group is deferred to for decision-making and opportunities because you're not redistributing power and there's no equitable treatment. And if we completely take out diversity and we only have a workforce that has equity and inclusion, then generally you have oversaturation of similarity, homogeneous, and simplified views. And you know what they say, if everyone was like you, life would be pretty boring, right? So it's important to have all 3 of these in your workplace. And when you have all 3, the goal is that you create a sense of belonging, an environment where views, beliefs, and values are integrated and innovation truly thrives. And we're going to go over in future slides all the benefits of DEI and why this should definitely be a focus of yours. All right, before we get into that, we threw in some fun industry leaders as examples into this presentation, because sometimes, we give you a lot of information and we don't necessarily provide you opportunity to see how this may come into play in your everyday life. So the first company we wanted to speak about is Nike. Nike actually leads consumer brands for diversity in advertising. And many of you may know this just by watching TV or listening to the news or reading some articles. Nike does a wonderful job of incorporating DEI. They feature stories about diverse athletes, and they showcase inclusive products, such as the Nike Pro Hijab for Muslim female athletes, adaptive activewear for people with disabilities, and athletic wear available in plus sizes. And then we did incorporate this image on the right to show you, this really stood out to us. When you look at all the employees of Nike in the US, 60.1% of them belong to a racial or ethnic minority or identify as one. So that's over half of their US workforce, and that is truly amazing. Many companies kind of throw these numbers out there, but I don't know that I've ever seen ones quite this impressive. Next, we wanted to shout out Starbucks. So Starbucks' commitment to inclusion, diversity, and equity is truly admirable. They hire, develop, and advance their employees' journey towards DEI through new mentorship programs, piloting outreach workers at its cafes, and creating pledges to have more minorities in its corporate workforce. So Starbucks actually recently created this mentorship program where they partner employees that identify in their BIPOC group, and you can see what that stands for down below, with high-level executives to get them on a track to promote or become, closer to that level, or to become executives themselves. And so you can see that as of October 3rd, 2021, the Starbucks US partner base was 71.3% female and 48.2% of that BIPOC group, so Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And then we broke it down even further for you at the bottom of the slide. The other thing that Starbucks offers that we didn't include on this slide actually is they offer a 15-course anti-bias curriculum that they developed with Arizona State University. So not only do they do a wonderful job of incorporating this into their workforce, but they also continue to train people on why this is important and what this can look like. All right, so on a slightly different note, we did want to bring your attention to a recent court case that occurred. It was a pay equity case. So just so everyone has a general understanding, pay equity is the practice of compensating employees the same way for the same work, regardless of race, gender, disability, or other status. So recently, Google agreed to pay $118 million to settle in a pay equity case. Google paid 15,500 women employees with over 200 job titles, almost $17,000 less than men with the same title. So why are we telling you that? Well, we all know Google, and we all know, generally, hopefully we hear good things about Google and these other companies, but anybody can be, I don't want to say a victim, but can work on this kind of thing in their pay equity. And it's important that you evaluate your current practices in your workplace to ensure that, you don't have a case of your own. So consider collecting data on your employees, examine your workforce representation, and work with experts to remediate any problems the audit does reveal. And then ask yourself, is the cause due to implicit bias? Is it due to inconsistent talent development program? Or maybe it's due to something completely different. But if you don't do an audit, you just won't know. All right. Next, we want to chat through some benefits of DEI in the workplace. So we've highlighted 3 here and 3 on the next slide, and then dug a little deeper into those as well. First and foremost, when you have DEI in the workplace, you generally promote a shared experience. Your business will attract potential candidates and customers when they see themselves represented among every level of your organization and workforce. This really reminds me of, you always tell young kids in school that, they can be anything they want when they grow up. And sometimes it's really hard for them to understand that until they see people who look like them or speak like them or, act like them in that field or doing the job of their dreams. So it's very similar with adults. If you see people being successful and they, share similar characteristics as you do, then you're more likely to be successful or to go with that company. A sense of shared power and opportunity translates to better services and a happier workforce. Another benefit is it generally provides broader perspectives, and I'm sure you can all imagine why. It develops creative solutions and fosters a learning environment, and employees can better understand each other's differences, reducing conflict between different team members. It encourages a more positive environment, builds respect and trust in management, and lessens unconscious bias, bullying, and/or harassment. All right, the other 3 benefits we wanted to discuss is incorporating DEI in your workplace allows you to better understand your customers. So generally, when you have a more diverse team, it will help your company gain a broader understanding of your customers, which hopefully will enhance your financial performance, which I know is everyone's goal generally. And it also creates an inclusive environment, which can aid in decision-making, improving customer relationships, and business outcomes. Another benefit is it can boost your company image and reputation. So when you incorporate DEI, it helps you attract talent and simplify the recruitment process. And we'll go into some fun statistics on this on the next page. It also, or the next slide, it also contributes towards defining a good company culture. And lastly, it improves retention rate. So I know hiring right now has been quite the battle for almost everybody. So if you incorporate DEI in your workplace, it increases the confidence and performance across your employees who are easily able to express their ideas, provides equal opportunities for all, and guess what? They're more likely to stay with you then. All right, so we have some fun statistics for all of you. So did you know that according to Glassdoor, 67% of job seekers view a diverse workforce as an important factor when evaluating companies? So that's well over half of the people applying to jobs are looking for them. Harvard Business Review found that diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture a new market, and they're also 45% more likely to report increased market share year over year. Generally, we open a business to make money, right? So this is definitely a great perk. 83% of millennials, the largest working generation, report actively engaged when they believe their organization fosters an inclusive workplace culture. I know my team will tell you one of the #1 questions we get is how do we allow or get our employees to feel more engaged, especially in this new remote work environment? Right here, incorporate DEI and focus on it. According to a study conducted by Ford, diverse teams make better decisions up to 87% of the time, which makes sense. If everybody around you was the same, it would be a pretty boring world. And lastly, according to a Gallup study, only 41% of US managers said they had received training or education around diversity, equity, and inclusion, leaving them feeling unprepared. So we keep training on this and talking about how important it is, but we need to get our managers on board. So let's review a DEI strategy framework now. So in order, organizations must develop a DEI strategy that aligns with their goals and objectives. It is important to have a framework to guide their efforts. The same way we have a company business plan or a COVID prevention plan, we need a DEI strategy in our workplace. So first and foremost, as with any strategy, we need to define what the strategy is, define the DEI purpose and vision, and identify metrics and measurable targets. How will we know if we are successful? 2, leadership commitment. We touched on this on the last slide. Make sure your leaders are on board. Define leadership roles and expectations. Empower your leaders through learning and trainings. That is key. And establish leadership accountability. Recruitment and hiring of diverse talent. Identify your DEI hiring goals. Adopt inclusive sourcing methods and address bias in your interview process. Which takes us into inclusive performance management. Incorporate DEI goals into performance goals, monitor, measure, and evaluate those outcomes. Create an inclusive organizational culture, so identify inclusive values and behaviors, foster an environment of trust and transparency, increase awareness and education opportunities. And lastly, marketplace and community impact. So establish strategic alliances and partnerships, cultivate pipeline and education initiatives, and then engage in diverse suppliers and engage diverse suppliers and vendors. All right, so let's think outside the box for a moment. What are some things you can do within your organization to improve your DEI? Well, first and foremost, establish a sense of belonging. And I know that sounds much easier probably than it truly is. And how you do this will differ from organization to organization, because some people, everyone requires different things to be motivated. Everyone requires different things to feel like they belong. So how do you know what your employees need? Ask them, survey them, conduct one-on-ones, get their feedback. This is huge. Ensure your employees have a fair salary and benefits package. Conduct an audit, see where everyone's at. Rewrite job descriptions. Make sure that your job descriptions aren't written in a way that only attracts one kind of person or one ethnic group or one, a certain age. Definitely reevaluate those. Support innovation and creativity. Identify unconscious biases. Recognize microaggressions. Restructure your recruitment process, and reevaluate company policies and procedures. All right, now what are some consequences? So let's say you don't have time. You don't have time for DEI. You don't have a designated person to focus on it. Why is this a big deal? Even after we outlined the benefits and shared some statistics, what are the risks if I don't do this? You might be asking. Well, there's a potential increase in discrimination and harassment claims in your workplace. You've limited perspective, right? If everyone's the same, your perspective is definitely going to be limited. Generally, unfair treatment is more likely. You may see a decrease in your retention rate and employee morale. People might not be as happy. Could cause a hostile work environment. It may create limits in the workplace related to employees hired, financial success, opportunities for employees, and available accommodations. And then you may create a negative public image for yourself as well, because this is becoming something that's pretty standard across the board. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into is a little bit of testing your knowledge. We're going to start with some true or false questions. If you can type your answers into the questions box, just true or false, this way I get a good feel for where we're all at. One thing I did forget to mention at the very beginning of the presentation, so I'm just going to throw it in now. We do have 2 handouts for you today. One of them is a copy of the slides, so feel free to follow along the rest of the way with those, or just print them out and take notes for future use. And then we also have a survey in there. So at the very beginning, I asked you all to take a minute and kind of rate where you were in your current DEI in your workplace. We have a more lengthy survey you can use to do that on your own time if you wish to do so. All right, so we're going to test your knowledge. True or false? Focusing on diversity, equity, or inclusion is sufficient. There is really no need to incorporate all 3 into your workplace. All right, good. Perfect, thank you for listening. False is the correct answer, and every single person got that right. All right, next, diversity encompasses not only commonly recognize differences such as race, sex, and religion, but also less obvious individual differences such as social style, political beliefs, and mode of dress. True. Okay, well, if you didn't know it was true, I gave it away, but it looks like everyone had already submitted it. So wonderful job. Okay, those were a little easy, so we're going to throw a tricky question at you next, and then we'll get back to the presentation. All right. Which of these would be a potential barrier that could accidentally discriminate against certain employees? Is it A, holding an event on a Monday morning? Is it B, using a different office across the corridor? Or is it C, attending a lunch with alcoholic drinks? Go ahead and type A, B, or C into the chat. Okay, well, maybe it wasn't as difficult as I thought. We have a strong majority of you who think it is C, and you are correct. So having alcohol could be creating a barrier for anyone who cannot drink because of religion. So although it may not have been done, it may have been done accidentally, it can make a group of people feel unwanted and not included. There's also, of course, other risks associated with alcohol in the workplace, but it's not what we're talking about today. So really, really great job, everybody. It looks like you all know what you're talking about. So props to you. All right, so we gave you a lot of information today, and you may be thinking you want some help on how to improve DEI in your workplace. So we are here to help you. Payentry HR Services is here to help with all your DEI needs. Our HR professionals can help review and create job descriptions. We can help audit your current practices related to hiring and onboarding, benefit offerings, trainings, and more. And we can help brainstorm how you can improve DEI in your company. And then lastly, our HR services compliance package includes a learning management system with hundreds of trainings available to you and your employees, including diversity training. So some of the trainings that we currently offer are a manager's guide to diversity, inclusion, and accommodation, diversity on the job, the importance of diversity and the changing workplace, global diversity, and then lastly, your role in workplace diversity. All right. Thank you all so much. Do we have any questions? I'm opening up the question box one more time. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw it in there. Somebody did ask, why can't you offer both non-alcoholic and alcoholic drinks to make people feel included? That could absolutely be an option. You know, if there's no pressure coming from any colleagues or managers or anyone to have them drink alcohol and they feel included, then I think that would probably be less of a liability, but definitely something to consider and talk through with your HR professional. All right, let me just check one more time. What does it cost for this HR service? Great question. So our HR service package is $8 per employee per month. We do have a $200 a month minimum. So if you have less than, I believe it's 25 employees, you would be paying that $200 a month minimum. So definitely a pretty competitive price there compared to some other companies. But if you want to know more or kind of what it includes or want a long list of what our compliance package includes, we're happy to send you our brochure. Just shoot us an email at hrservices@payentry.com. It's right over here. And we will absolutely get some more information to you. All right, well, it looks like that's all the questions. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hopefully will see you in 2 weeks for our next presentation. Have a wonderful rest of your day.